additional items. You might notice we have a green agenda, a salmon colored agenda, and a blue agenda. We're going to run these three meetings concurrently. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the City Council, the regular meeting of the Housing Authority, and a special meeting of the Successor Agency to the formal Lake Forest Redevelopment Agency. And tonight, we'd like to be led by the Pledge of Allegiance by Council Member Robinson.
Please rise and join me in pledging allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Attorney, is there anything to report in closed session from either the City Council or Housing Authority?
There's no reportable action taken, Mayor.
Thank you. We have 4 presentations this evening, and may I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any item within the subject matter. Okay, we'll take those 4 presentations. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Presentation, item number 3, recognition of Leadership Development Program graduates, submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services.
Mayor and members of the City Council, tonight we're really pleased to recognize our first class of city employees that completed the Cal State Fullerton Leadership Development Program. So if I could please have Mayor Voigt join Carlo over at the podium. We're actually going to call up our graduates individually. And as the mayor makes his way down, I'll give you a little bit of information about this. This is a new program that was authorized by the council in 2011. We had 14 city employees complete the program that was offered by Cal State Fullerton Extended Education and was offered here at City Hall. The program took employees a little over a year, and it included classes such as communication, strategic decision-making, business ethics, and organizational leadership. So at this time, I would like to call those that are in the audience up to receive their certificates and their gift from Cal State Fullerton. So, going on to my list, our first graduate is Recreation Manager Vicki Blethen. Our next graduate is newly promoted Engineering Services Manager / Assistant City Engineer, Angel Fortes. We also have Recreation Program Manager Rob Gaylord. Next up is our Public Works Management Analyst, Irene Ka. Also from Community Services, our Senior Recreation Coordinator, Ron Rivera. From Development Services, one of our senior planners, Ron Santos. From Management Services, our Administrative Services Manager, Hannah Shin Hadorn. And also from Management Services, our City Clerk, Stephanie Smith. So I know they all snuck back to their seats, but we'd like them to come up for an obligatory group picture that I can post on our internet site. So please join the mayor over by the podium. And if someone could slide that over. Well, let's slide this back. And as is our tradition, we'd like everyone to gather around. Think about Little League when you're a kid, you know. We all want to be in one picture. Very good. All right, congratulations to you all.
Okay, presentation number 2.
Agenda item 4, introduction of new employee, Kelly Fleming, Public Works Manager, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Mayor, members of the council. Thanks. I'd love to introduce to you Kelly Fleming. You should be here. Come on up, Kelly. There we go. Kelly Fleming is our new Public Works Manager. She will oversee all of our parks, streets, landscaping, fleet maintenance, and facilities maintenance. She's a recent employee, was a recent employee of the city of Carlsbad. She comes here after 9 years, and she is a graduate of Baylor University, where she holds the school record for most home runs in a game at 3 for women's softball. So please welcome Kelly Fleming.
Agenda item 5, introduction of new employee, Douglas Erdman, Principal Civil Engineer, Public Works, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Doug started with us actually yesterday, so he's first time in the chambers. Doug Erdman is from the city of Dana Point, or most recently worked at the city of Dana Point, and he will be helping us with the CIP projects. He took the principal engineering position here at the city. Doug comes from a private sector background. At the beginning of his career, a lot of good design experience and design strengths, and he's been with the city of Huntington Beach and Dana Point most recently. Doug also took 11th place in the barbecue rib category of the city of Dana Point's recent cooking contest. So that had very little to do with his hiring, but we do appreciate his talents, and I look forward to many more great years with Doug. Please welcome Doug.
Agenda item number 6, presentation of the 2012 Project of the Year Award for the Alton Parkway Project, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
We brought the plaque this time. This is a American Society of Civil Engineers, the Orange County chapter, is a group of civil engineers that recognizes outstanding projects. This is the Project of the Year award, and emphasis on the meaning this was the project out of all the projects in Orange County that the civil engineering community is designed with both, or associated with both private and public sector. Alton Parkway was chosen for the many reasons that we all know. How long it took, how much coordination was required from the federal government to local government. And so it's really a proud accomplishment to be able to have this, and I wanted to share it with the City Council and with the community. And so thank you.
I'd like to make a comment, and you know, we as council members are only as good as our staff, and the fact is that Tom came in on the heels of another great public works director, Bob Woodings, and so we have much to thank our staff, Bob Woodings, Tom, and Bob Dunnick for the completion of Alton Parkway, and the council that came before us, so thank you so much. Student liaison. Thank you. Some good news?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. El Toro hosted their first school-wide dress donation drive led by Ariel Spencer. El Toro was able to collect over 100 gently used and new dresses for underprivileged girls. The Belle of the Ball will be held at El Toro High School later this month. It will truly be a night to remember. Last Friday night, El Toro held their third annual Mr. Charger pageant. There were 15 senior male contestants. Each contestant answered a series of questions, performed a choreographed team dance, and performed a special talent ranging from singing and guitar solos to acting, dancing, and magic. Mr. Charger of 2012 and 2013 school year is Gregory Warner. Second place was Joel Ingracia, and third place Cody Sargenti. The theater sold out almost immediately after the ticket booths had opened, and the show was a huge success. Superman, the all-high school musical, is almost here. Tickets will start selling this upcoming Monday on ETHSDrama.com. The prices are $10 for students and $12 for adults. You may buy them online or at the door on the night of the performance. On the day of each show, online sales will stop at 3 p.m., but you can still buy tickets at the door that night. The show will be from March 20th through the 23rd. This is a family event. Come out and support because, after all, it will be a super show. This past Sunday, March 3rd, marked the starting of having the WASC accreditation team visit El Toro. ASB students met the team on campus Sunday afternoon and gave them a tour of the campus, as well as showed them our famous lip dub video. Yesterday, during third period, a few members of the WASC team sat down with ASB and we had a discussion about El Toro. A few things we talked about were our sports, the crazy Charger spirit, tutorial, guidance, clubs, different ways to be involved, community service, our willingness to give back to our community, and most of all, the loving and charismatic student body at El Toro. The WASC team continues to give El Toro high praise and is very impressed with our work. That's all for tonight, and as always, go Chargers.
Go ahead. At this time, would you like to go to public comments? Members of the public may address the City Council regarding any items within the subject matter of the City Council, Housing Authority, or the successor agency. No action may be taken on any items listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes per public comment portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council, Housing Authority, or successor agency and this matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form available at the door over to here at the side. The completed form is then to be submitted to the city clerk over here at Deborah Rose. And prior to the individual being heard by the City Council or authority or agency, whenever possible, lengthy testimony should be presented in writing, 8 copies, and only permanent points be presented orally. Additionally, a request to written comments form is available on the agenda public review counter. At this time, do we have any public speak?
We've had no non-agendized requests to speak.
Move on to the consent calendar, warrant registry. Anything, council? May I take a step motion?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Consent calendar. At this time, all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be acted at one vote. There will be no separation discussion on these items unless members of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency, or public staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Do we have any requests?
Yes, a member of the public is requesting item 12.
Item number 12. Okay. Anything from the council? Okay.
Second.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
I apologize. I didn't get the motion in a second, but I did want to clarify that these are all 3 consent calendars, the City Council, the Housing Authority, and the successor agency.
Yeah, I think we got that, so all 3.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I apologize. The mover, the maker of the motion? Thank you.
Item number 12. What we did, we called for the vote?
No, you did not.
Aye. Adam?
Please sit down.
Yeah, Mayor, just with regard to item number 14, we determined earlier in discussions with you and staff that your home is within 500 feet of one of those facilities, and so what
So I'm
we're suggesting...
clarifying an extension from item number 14.
Thank you.
Item number 12?
Agenda item 12, fiscal year 2012-2013, second quarter travel and meeting expenses, October 1, 2012 through December 31st, 2012, submitted by City Clerk and removed from the consent calendar by a member of the public. Jim Gardner?
Good evening, Mayor, and council members, and staff. I just wanted to, in reviewing the travel reimbursements, I noticed that council members Herzog, Robinson, and Nick weren't requesting anything. And I just wanted to say, we know your time is extremely valuable. You're already donating that. And that's, and you're all young guys, you're all working. So, and everybody appreciates that because it's a lot of work. And nobody expects you to pay for your own mileage. And if you're not going to do that, thank you very much. But, I'm sure the city can afford it in the future. If you don't plan to do it, thank you very much on behalf of the city.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I have pulled item 12 also, so at some point after that too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I thought I had pulled item 12 early on when I had the pleasure of seeing you a couple of hours ago. It doesn't matter. I just want to understand a couple of things. Mrs. Rudolph, who is no longer a council person, every month, I guess it's every month, Vector Control Board, the transportation is costing the taxpayers anywhere from $150 to about $200 each and every time. From this point forward, I know the decision was made for her to continue her role. These taxi rides, are they still going to be reimbursed by the city?
No. The travel reimbursement policy only applies for transportation reimbursements for members of the City Council. Mrs. Rudolph, as a private citizen volunteer on the Vector Control Board, is not eligible for reimbursement for her transportation.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure of that. Thank you so much.
So I call,
Mayor.
make a motion, please.
Can I make a statement?
Yes.
I think. Did Jim leave? Oh, he's still here. If you look at the application, what you see on there for Council Member Mayor Pro Tem Catherine McCullough is not travel expenses for gas. It's for the meetings that I attend. So I do not claim the travel expenses for gas or ground travel, except for when I go out of town. It's very expensive, and the city do that. So I just want to clarify that. Just clarifying that. Thank you. Move the item.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, public. Are you ready, Madam Clerk? Public hearing? At this time, I'd like to open up to the public.
Agenda item 15, resolution amending the city's fee schedule to include fees for notarization services submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, actually, I would return back to the city clerk for a brief presentation on this item before you take any public testimony.
Mayor and members of the council, the city clerk's office receives approximately 10 requests per month for notarization of documents, as residents are finding financial institutions and legal offices less accommodating in this area than in the past. To facilitate those requests, the Management Services Department budget initiatives for 2012-2013 include the implementation of notary public services. Staff conducted outreach to various cities in California and learned that many cities offer notary services to the general public during City Hall business hours. Under the jurisdiction of the Secretary of State, notaries may act for and on behalf of government agencies. We're proposing to offer notary services as a convenience to the community with a minimal fee applied to the service rendered, and it can be offered utilizing existing city staff. There are currently 3 commissioned notaries in the city clerk's division. The government code allows a notary public to charge a fee for all notarizations and to remit the fees received to the employing public agency. The current fee, as outlined by the Secretary of State, is $10 per signature for most notarizations. Staff proposes that this service would be provided by appointment or on a walk-in basis as available. The proposed resolution before you amends the city's schedule of fees for city services to include these notarization fees. Under Government Code Section 66016, the city is required to hold a public hearing and notice the general public for the proposed request and adoption of any imposed fee. This notice public hearing satisfies the requirements of the government code. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think it's a great thing. I think giving that service to our residents is great. Thank you so much for thinking of it. Just one suggestion, one request, if I may. From experience, I can tell you that everybody knows, I guess, title and escrow companies, for example, when you go back to them time and time again, I guess out of loyalty, they either give you a discount or they don't charge you that. AAA gives a discount for members. What I would like to see happen, that is, if we can get it approved, is for Lake Forest residents, the $10, let's charge them either nothing or maybe $5. And all they have to show is a driver's license showing that they're Lake Forest resident, or we can take their word for it. But I think it would be nice if they either pay nothing for notary services or pay half as much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further?
It is a notice public hearing, so we need to open the public hearing and ask
At
if
this
there's any...
time, we'd like to open to the public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Hearing, do we have any?
We've had no requests.
Okay, then I officially close public hearing and discussion among council. Do we have any other?
I actually have a mobile notary coming to my office tomorrow, so yeah, I think it's a great service that we can provide in town. I'm guessing the $10 is just to kind of recoup a little bit of staff time. Is that basically what?
The maximum fee, according to the government code, is $10 per signature. The actual cost would be much greater, but the city's only allowed to charge, any notary is only allowed to charge $10 per signature. That would be the maximum.
Okay. Your request is what exactly?
Lake Forest residents pay nothing for notary. And if that cannot be, then I would like them to pay half as much, as opposed to the full $10, $5.
Okay. Are there other cities that are providing this service? Are we first in South Orange County, or?
We're not the first in South Orange County, and other cities that are the cities that we have spoken to are all charging $10,
Okay.
the statutory maximum fee.
Okay. I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Nick, Councilman Nick, sorry. I think it's an insignificant amount, definitely, but being that it's going to take some staff time, I think I'd still want to stick with the $10. I know that it would be, it's going to cost probably a lot more than that from a staff time perspective, so, but thanks.
Can we take a vote on this one?
Mayor?
I'll move staff recommendation.
You want to?
Mayor Pro Tem.
He wants to move staff recommendation.
Do you have a second?
And I'll second if it leaves discussion open and
Leave discussion.
Room for amendment. Being that I was a notary for years and before I got on here, and I used to do a sliding scale, rather than a fixed $5, I will go more with the staff recommendation, because I see it already covered one of the things I was concerned for, that developers and mortgage people could not come in and get the notary for $10. It's covering the citizens, not businesses, for the $10. But I still have a concern about that. As far as the state is concerned, it's $10 per signature. And I got a feeling that when people find out about it, that's more is going to come. But leaning over to where Councilmember Nick is coming from, as far as a sliding scale, I think that we may want to leave a little hole for case by case, because like one of the things that I used to do when I was a notary, I'd go to some of the people in affordable housing that I serviced. They would have all these papers to be certified once a year, and they really could not afford it, and some of them got put on reports and stuff because they couldn't. Now, we don't have a lot of affordable housing in that category here, but once we have this publicized that we do it. There may bring more. But at this time, I would like to have it where my colleagues would agree for me to bring this back forward if we see that we're having situations where people couldn't afford the $10 per sheet. One sheet, that's nothing, but if they have a lot. And so I will support, I've been the second, I will support the motion as staff recommended. Call for the vote.
Called for the vote? Aye. Okay. At this time, we're going to discussion items. The following matters are on the City Council consideration, discussion, and action. Members of the public may have the opportunity to address these items if they wish to do so. Please complete the request to speak form and give to the City Clerk. Madam Clerk.
Agenda item 16, mid-year budget review, submitted by Director of Finance, City Treasurer.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we actually have this item to include not only the mid-year budget review, but you'll see there was an A and a B, and those are on there because they relate to appropriations. And so we wanted not to be, I would say, presumptuous and have you approve those on the consent calendar before you actually do the mid-year. So that's why you see them as an A and a B. And whatever your action is tonight, we would like all three of those items to be acted on. If you choose to act them all at once, terrific. If you want to do them sequentially, it'd be your pleasure. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our finance director to provide you a report on this item.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Presented before you tonight in agenda item number 16 is a mid-year budget review. The mid-year budget review is being presented to the council to report the actual results of fiscal year 2011-2012 compared to the beginning balances in the fiscal year 2012-2013 operating budget, and to recommend changes to revenues, expenses, and interfund transfers based on actual activity during the first 6 months of this fiscal year. I'm going to go over the general fund overview for you tonight. That's the major fund of the city, the major operating fund. The proposed mid-year budget would increase general fund revenues by approximately $2.2 million and expenditures by $1.1 million. Some of the most notable revenue increases are taxes. Property taxes are going up $1.2 million, which reflects the city's share of the available balance from the former redevelopment agency. Staff will have a better projection on the ongoing revenue that we will get in from the former redevelopment agency, and we'll bring that forward in the 13-14 budget, but there'll be some ongoing revenue that will come from that project area. Sales tax is going up roughly $300,000 from our budget of $12.6 million. It's going to $12.9 million. TOT, or transiency occupancy taxes, is going up $150,000. Both the sales tax and the TOT is showing an overall improvement in the economy, so that's why that seems to be going up. User fees are all up as more OSA projects are starting to move forward in the city. We're seeing building permits revenues going up $150,000, planning and zoning fees $400,000, and engineering fees $150,000. That all is related to the OSA project area and permits coming in. Staff is also asking for some new appropriations on the expenditure side of the general fund. I'll go through a few of the departments that are asking for some appropriations. The city attorney proposed adjustments of $340,000. $240,000 is for the for applicant-initiated reimbursable work, so that's totally reimbursable by the applicant, and the rest is attributed to unforeseen litigation. Development Services is asking for a proposed adjustment of $265,000. $176,000 of that is for the Portola Center EIR, and the remainder will cover applicant-initiated reimbursable work. In the Public Works Department, we have a proposed adjustment of $428,000. $150,000 will be offset by developer deposits. That's the Shea Baker development. $120,000 is offset by grant revenue. That is just current grants in the city that we need an appropriation for, that we've already received the revenue. And then $190,000 is for various maintenance items. That is street sweeping, the streetscape project, medium landscaping, and there's an item in there for graffiti abatement on the restrooms, a clear coat, a one-time charge for that. Then on community services, we are proposing adjustment of $30,000. Will allow staff to solicit proposals to initiate a community engagement process and design services for Village Pond Park. That is on 16A item. And then police services, we're proposing adjustment of $27,500 for the replacement of a police motorcycle. The purchase would be funding in its entirety by the Traffic Violators Apprehension Program grant, so it's completely offset by the grant, but it's going to be replaced one of the motorcycles that is currently out of service. And then in our other funds, our special revenue funds outside the general fund, overall in the general fund, like I said, you got $2.2 million in revenue and $1.1 million in expenditures, so it looks like you're going to be putting about $1.1 million into general fund balance. Now, the other funds overview, the proposed mid-year budget would increase other funds revenues by about $1.2 million and expenditures by about $800,000. Most of that $1.2 million, it's actually about $1.5 million, is the Whistler impact fees coming in from the KB Home project, and there's a decrease on some of the on the TE grants for the streetscape projects. We received that money last year, so we're just lowering the budget to the actual amount we'll receive this year. And then we have a couple other grants from Rancho Parkway that are increasing that revenue. And on the expenditure side, we have a capital improvement project, Chapico Road, MPAH. We need about $569,000, a new appropriation for that. Not a new appropriation, we just need to appropriate money to finish the project and to finish the accounting on the project. We have some gas tax money that needs to be spent for signal maintenance and street maintenance contracts from the County of Orange. Just some late invoices, about 6 or 7 months late from the County of Orange, that they did not send us last year, so we did not spend the appropriation last year. We're just asking you for the new appropriation this year so we can get those invoices paid to the County of Orange. We have a AQMD appropriation of about $10,000 for the Major P project that you've seen that agenda item. Synchronization tonight. And then just some adjustments on some police grants to supplemental law enforcement. We'll be receiving a little more money than $100,000 that they appropriate us each year. We're going to get about $125,000 to $130,000, so we just need the appropriation to be able to spend it all on police services. And we'll be replacing a vehicle, a code enforcement truck that is kind of out of order, and it meets the replacement policy for vehicles. It's becoming more expensive to keep fixing it than the Blue Book value, so it's being replaced tonight. And then interfund transfers. Several adjustments to interfund transfers are proposed based on revenue increases recommended in the general fund. Since we are adding $2.2 million to the general fund, we will increase the transfers to the reserve policies. So both of our reserves will increase because revenue in the general fund is increasing. And then in the conclusion, staff believes that the proposed adjustments to beginning balances, revenues, appropriations, and interfund transfers would update the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget. I'll turn it back over to the mayor and the council members if you have any questions.
Council? Public to speak? Public first.
Actually, I have two requests to speak for agenda item 16A, and
We're not on there yet.
don't know if you would like to take them separately?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please. Anything, questions to Keith?
Keith, you may or may not be able to answer this. I heard you mention about the police grant. There is a grant that I just found out on my conference call Thursday with Sacramento that what is it? Police Chiefs Association statewide is taking the They got 2 bills pending, and they're soliciting grant funds, and grant applications will be asked for. Have we gotten any monies in, or did our chief of police? That's why I said it may take both of you to apply for that funds, because they're doing a statewide awareness of drugs and violence combination. And I need to know if our chief has applied for any, and did we get any grant monies from it? Or have you heard of it?
Well, I have not heard, or I don't think we have applied, but I'll let the
Please
chief
keep your
answer.
eyes open. It's a nice chunk of money that will really help. Bullying is included, all types of things is included, anything with violence or drugs or alcohol.
We'll research it and see what's out there, and then we'll let the council know what we find.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Would you like us to separate these votes? Yeah, okay. As it would entertain motion,
So moved.
second.
Okay, just for clarification, this is the full recommendations on the mid-year budget.
Yes, on the budget review.
Excluding A and B.
Excluding A and B. Okay. Call for the vote? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Madam Clerk, on A.
Agenda item 16A, request for proposal for Village Pond Park Design Services, submitted by Director of Community Services.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this item is one that has been in the offering for some time. The council, I think, recalls we've had issues clearly with Village Pond Park. It happened to be one that had not been in our previous programming, but existing needs suggest that the city take the opportunity to do there what we have done in other parks throughout the community. We did send out a letter to all of our residents early in the summer who live around the park, soliciting actually their interest in being on an interest list into the future, where the city would engage in a process for the purposes of making improvements to Village Pond Park, as we have some others throughout the community. And this is an RFP that the city would release for the purposes of getting a consultant who would help us engage the community in that process to determine what improvements would need to occur at Village Pond Park and lead to actual design. The staff is bringing it to you this evening in order that we get the ball rolling on it somewhat. Clearly, you will be considering your 5-year plan and a new capital improvement plan later on in the spring. However, the RFP process takes some time, so provided that the council still feels that this is a priority that you have, then we'd like to be able to get this process going so it could actually be included within your 5-year plan. And honestly, it would take some time, obviously, to go through the process, design it, and we would identify in that 5-year plan when actual improvements would be constructed, predicated on the outcome and approval by the city council. So what you have this evening is a fairly simplistic RFP that we have that is pretty standard with what we do in this instance as it relates to other park improvements that we've done throughout the community. So it's a very similar RFP. But if you have any questions about that, we'd be glad to respond to those. And with that, Mr. Mayor, we'll turn it back to the council.
Madam Clerk, from the public.
David Brokaw, followed by Jim Gardner.
I'm Dave Brokaw. I live at 24265 Cedar Brook in Lake Forest. I've been a resident since 1982. I have photographs of the sidewalk and park area and people feeding the Canadian geese that are in there. We have a 5-house cul-de-sac. It is the most unhealthy, totally decimated area in the city of Lake Forest. There is nothing but bird excrement on your cars, your garage door, your fence, your walkway, the sidewalk. I'm going to start passing these around.
Pass them up there at the front. Yeah.
There's a walkway that something that I wish you'd all take a time to run by, take a look at it. And I don't think there's a person in here that wouldn't let their granddaughter or daughter go out there and have a picnic lunch. It is so inundated with Canadian geese droppings. Unfortunately, as a center house, I am on the flight path, and I can see them coming. The dog and I literally go in the garage so we don't get pelted. You wash your car, you don't even get a full day out of it, and it hits the windshield, it just spatters all over. You cannot open a window because they'll hit the screens, and all of a sudden it's in your house. And this just has escalated to the point of where, unfortunately, you come home and it's not a pleasant place to be anymore. It's that bad. The street sweeper came around this morning, but the center cul-de-sac is literally stacked with bird droppings. You would never, ever want your dog or your kids are out there. If you walk across the street, you better come back and wash your shoes before you go in the house. It's that bad. And I'd appreciate it sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Drive down, take a look at what we're dealing with. We had a deputy coming by the other day. The geese have the attitude of, hey, we're here, you go around. He hits the siren a couple of times, whoop, whoop, and they just look at him and say, go around. They are fearless. They'll take you on right now, and I'm telling you, they have processed more food and deposited it on our houses to the point of where John, my neighbor, goes out there, and every single day, at least once a day, you have to wash it down. It's so bad.
Well, it looks like you have a lot to say at the community forums we have up there.
Pardon me?
Well, you'll be having a lot to say when we come and have our community input.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. I just want to finish one thing. This is something that I think we have to address pretty quick because it's such a terrible health hazard for everybody.
We will be. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Jim Gardner.
It's a tough act to follow. I've been on the board, or in the past president, for the past 6 years of the HOA that surrounds on 3 sides the park. For the past 2 years, I've been working with the police department and the neighborhood watchwoman, who's a great woman to work with, on the crime problems in the Village Pond area. So I'm really very familiar with the area. Several things I want to point out. The first is, as the man before me pointed out, is the enormous number of animals and the enormous number of animal waste. The reason for that is because the city does not enforce the rule of stopping people from feeding. People show up in their cars, they open, sometimes an entire trunk is filled with food. Sometimes it's just enormous plastic bags. The city does not enforce that rule. Now, one of the problems is that's unhealthy for the ducks. That's probably one of the reasons we had an epidemic of botulism, for which the city was completely unprepared about 2 years ago. And I subsequently met with the city staff and with animal control, and we're still not ready for another case of botulism, but let's talk about that later. The problem with the waste when it's not on this man's car in his house is it's being funneled into the pond by city contractors. They take the waste and they get rid of it by funneling in the pond, which makes for a filthy pond, which then causes more problems. As far as the crime in the area, the crime in the area is about twice as high as the numbers would indicate, and that's because there's a lot of unreported crime, which we went through with the Neighborhood Watch. Police came up with a solution for that. There's apparently one corner there that's particularly a center for crime or for the start of the crime. Criminals gather from there and then pillage the neighborhood, as it were, and that area needs a light, but the city refuses to put a light there. The city wants the homeowner association to put a light there on city property where people locate in cars on a city street, and the homeowner association. Well, the bottom line in all of this is that the problems at the Village Pond Park are being caused by the city. Now, it doesn't matter by their not enforcing the law, by their sweeping the waste in there, by their not putting up the lights. So it really doesn't matter. You could spend $30,000 or $300,000. The city's not going to do their job. Those problems will remain. On the other hand, if the city did a better job with all of those things, we don't need to redesign the park. The park's completely lovely, as it were, but it's got problems. Those problems are all solvable today if the city did a better job in those areas which I pointed out. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've had no further requests.
Back to the board.
Well, I'm pleased staff brought this forward. I mean, I think we have gone through every park in the city and taken a very detailed look at each one to see what can and should be done. And I think moving forward with Village Pond Park and doing the exact same thing, this park is far more complicated and has many more issues than the other ones. So I think taking a long, detailed view of it and coming up with a real, true solution to the varied problems that exist out there is certainly one that I certainly do support. And so I certainly move staff's recommendation that we move forward with the RFP and look forward to working with the community on what can be done overall for more of a solution to this park issue.
Second it.
Any other no comments?
I agree with Peter. I'm really, I think the community input's incredibly important. I know that when my own park was being looked at, the one that's across the street from my house a few years ago, the community really galvanized around that event. There were a lot of participants, and I think that's really important. So I want to make sure that we properly notice this, which I'm sure we will. And it sounds like we've already started sending letters out to the community. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that letter was out quite some time ago. We have and Mr. McGill has been building a pretty robust list of people who would like to be engaged in working with the city to look at the park and what it might be long-term, because that's what this is a long-term improvement to the park. And I would, Mr. Mayor, when it's appropriate, speak to some of the other issues I think that were raised.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I actually drove right by there the other day and saw people getting out of their cars with bags and walking over to feed the geese and the ducks. It's something that is a beautiful park. The fact that we have people feeding the ducks and the fowl things that they're not supposed to be eating in the first place. And then, can you address the sweeping of the droppings into the pond? Are we clarified that and changed that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. A couple of things. As we know, there was an outbreak of botulism problems related with the ducks back in the park a few years ago. The city actually jointly funded a water quality study with the Lake One Homeowners Association. So we both put money together in a cooperative effort to try and evaluate what was going on at the park. There were a number of recommendations that were made for short-term solutions to try and deal with some of the problems that were existing then at the park. And the city knew that and also thought it would be appropriate to look at this at a more long-term basis. One of the things that was clear, and we did have a contractor in the past we would power wash the sidewalk around the pond. And we discovered he was, in fact, washing that into the pond. We no longer do that and have not done that for quite some time. That excrement is vacuumed up and taken away. So it's no longer going into the water. There are other things that we have looked at with the council previously on making some short-term improvements. This whole situation is one in which the history is long, and I know members of the council know this very well. The city stepped into the shoes of the County of Orange that it entered into a contract with the Lake Forest One Association. And in that contract, it spells out mutual responsibilities. It is the responsibility of the Lake Forest Homeowners Association to maintain water quality in the pond. It is the responsibility of the city to ensure that we maintain the park and also that it is a bird sanctuary. That is an existing contract that the HOA entered into with the county, that we maintain that park as a bird sanctuary, however one chooses to want to define that concept. The city has stepped into the shoes, and clearly we all know that there is an overabundance of waterfowl at that park. Then the water body attracts them, clearly. We've seen the pictures. We've been out there. I've walked it several times. I know members of the council have been out there and seen it. We are looking to try to improve on a short-term basis the things that we see out there. But we also believe there's a long-term solution that will need to be put into place. And it's in our judgment and recommendation of the staff is that we start that process today while we continue to look at short-term solutions. As it relates to the street light, I'm being told that we're evaluating that. We haven't said no. I don't think we have said yes. But I believe we are evaluating whether or not a light there makes sense. And it may very well. We don't know. We haven't concluded that yet. But, Mr. Mayor, the staff in the city clearly are very aware of the issues at Village Pond Park. We've been out there a lot. We know it. We are doing what we can, working cooperatively with the Lake Forest Homeowners Association. We meet with them regularly to talk about what's going on out there. We would certainly appreciate people not feeding the ducks and the other fowl that are out there, but that's very hard to obviously police. We try to educate as much as we can. However, we know it's a challenge, but I do believe that working hand in hand with that local community, but also recognizing that Village Pond Park is a citywide asset. So working with the entire community to make improvements is what we believe makes good sense. And certainly that has been the position of this council. And clearly, Mr. Mayor, we'd be glad to respond to any questions that you have. But as it relates to the spraying into the water body, we do not do that anymore and have not for some time.
Council?
Yes. Nick was first.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. First of all, I'm glad we finally got to this point, and the pond was not always like that. Back in 1960s, it was beautiful. Everybody went sit and have your lunch there, and you take your grandkids there. But now you can't even get to the. You would not want to eat your lunch there. And the gentleman that spoke first, he spoke of the droppings, but we're getting close to summer again, and the smell probably really gets the homeowners severely. And I'm by there regularly. I keep my car windows up when I go by. And I'm glad that we're finally getting this where the community itself can come and help shape and mold something for the park that is for all of us. And hopefully we can get it back where you can sit and have lunch, because the ducks will really take your lunch. Don't try to eat there. And we used to go there regularly. So I'm glad to see this coming forth, but I do feel that we need to keep our focus that this is a joint effort, and the city alone cannot do it, and the association alone cannot do it. I believe that we have a joint effort, and so putting our heads together, getting the citizens involved, and making sure that the city and the association is working together, I believe that this is a very highly intelligent city, our people and all, and that whenever we all come together, we come up with some good solutions. And I believe that we're going to have this fixed before this summer so I can drive past with my windows down. Thank you.
As part of this, well, it wouldn't necessarily be the immediate RFP, but through this process, are we also going to be sitting down and taking a look at this contract that we inherited?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it would be our recommendation that, yes, we do that. It's a very old agreement. Clearly, it would benefit from being updated so that it reflects accurately that which both the city as well as the association would care to achieve out there. So if that was the council's pleasure is to start looking at that, then we could bring that back to you separately and start to look at how that would work.
Okay, because, I mean, I'm very familiar with the park for a variety of reasons and have been for about 26 years. And, you know, particularly the one gentleman that spoke, if it's to remain a bird sanctuary, I have a feeling the flight path is not going to change for him and the other neighbors in the area. So it seems that also is one particular area that needs to be reviewed, because that seems to be sort of the crux of a lot of the issues that are now in existence at that park. So, you know, I do look forward to the discussion of the contract and looking at that in detail. So thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor. Are you adding that to your motion, that we look at the contract, or you want a separate motion?
No, this is just for the RFP. That's-
Okay.
Staff's written it down for when we actually get to...
They got the directions to bring it back.
This RFP for this project and looking into this is going to be a great thing for the community and the association and the city. So, and those ducks that were dying off last year. So, I call a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Madam Clerk.
Agenda item 16B, letter agreement with Orange County Transportation Authority for funding under the Environmental Cleanup Program of the Comprehensive Transportation Funding Program, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just very quickly, this item is before you because separately because it ends up requiring action by the council to approve a letter agreement. It's for a grant program related to catch basins, and we put it into the mid-year because it needs an appropriation. The staff could respond to any questions that you have, but we believe it lays it out fairly well in the report.
Anything, council? Public comments on 16B?
We've had no requests.
Council?
Moved item.
Call for the vote. Aye.
Aye.
Agenda item 17, consideration of local government sunshine policies and practices, submitted by City Attorney.
Thank you, City Attorney.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Good evening. Beginning in the 1950s, one California newspaper noticed that in its particular host city, more action was happening behind closed doors than in open doors. And that was kind of the beginning of a movement in California that came into full bloom later on in my formative years. I was able 2 weeks ago on President's Day, coincidentally, to drive my son through Foggy Bottoms and show him the Watergate Hotel, which was the birthplace of a national movement toward government in the sunshine, greater access, and citizen participation in government. The California legislature, I said, was ahead of its time in adopting government sunshine laws, which include the Ralph M. Brown Act, requiring local agencies to meet and deliberate the public's business publicly, the California Public Records Act, providing greater access to public writings, and the Political Reform Act, which provides for disclosure of financial interests, political contributions of elected officials, and includes constraints on their activities and disqualification with regard to their financial interests. As the Council asked, we have brought back a summary of what several California cities have done, including Lake Forest, in terms of broadening and amplifying the state governmental sunshine laws. Although none of these cities has adopted every policy illustrated in the matrix attached to our staff report, including Lake Forest, some of them, including Lake Forest, have adopted either through codification or through best practices varied and unique requirements that meet local circumstances and supplement state law in these ways. I won't go on to list from the menu each of the ways that this has happened, except to tell you that as we went through these several ordinances, they do fall into amplification of three types of laws that I mentioned: the Brown Act, the Political Reform Act, and the California Public Records Act. With regard to the Brown Act, some alter or amplify notice of meetings, some require community meetings or on-site meetings with regard to large development projects or public works projects. With regard to public records, many of them provide for digitization and direct access to documents. Some provide for isolation and separate filing of communications and calendars of council members. Others provide for web display of city contracts, requests for bids, and requests for proposals. Some augment the Political Reform Act in providing limitations on political contributions or having local regulations relating to lobbying and advocacy. Our recommendation is that the council receive and file this report. I'll call to your attention the third column, which is the one reserved for the City of Lake Forest, where we've shown either through codification or best practices, the city has adopted the policies and practices that we've noted. If the council so wishes, staff recommends that the council give direction on which elements the council might like to include for amplification, instruct staff to return with a policy to implement then, or simply to ask staff to continue in its path toward implementation and magnification of the practices documented in column 3.
I actually have a question right off, and for the public's information, city attorneys put together a spreadsheet with a bunch of different cities, including ours, that show how we compare and stack up to other cities. And I'm very impressed by what we have here. But it was brought to my attention that maybe that we could work to digitalize our records, much like we do for some of our things, and FPPC ruling or filings from us as elected officials, the 460s, the 800s. If we can maybe work to move that towards posting on the website, then is that something that we could do?
That's a pretty big initiative that's already underway, Mayor. If I could turn to the manager or Ms. Smith to help me out, they can tell you exactly where that's to and what the plan is.
Mr. Members of the Council, actually, I'm going to turn it over to Deborah Rose, who is Department Head in charge of Information Technology, our computer system. And as the Attorney said, we've had an initiative for some time that is digitizing, taking all of our records and putting them on our optical system. And there has been a project, an initiative that the city has undertaken for some time that I'd like to have Ms. Rose talk about.
Okay, Mayor and members of the City Council, I wanted to just briefly start by telling you what's available online now through our city's website. So right now the public can research City Council staff reports, proposed resolutions, proposed ordinances, draft minutes, draft city agreements over $30,000, EIRs, items that have gone before the Planning Commission and the Park and Rec Commission since 2009, and that's when we launched our SIRE agenda system. So all of that is searchable through our current agendas page on our website. In addition, we have major project records, things like the Opportunity Study. All of those studies, EIR and so forth, are posted on our website, as well as our city financial documents like our budget, our CAFR, our 5-year strategic plan, our fee schedule, and then major studies that we've done like our biennial residential and business survey. So what's coming up, again, as Bob said, this imaging is an ongoing effort that the city's been working on for many years. And we have our internal imaging system where we're, as staff, able to go in and look up more historical documents. And so we're actually in the final stages of a project to make that available online to the public as well. And so at this point, we're kind of perfecting the front end of it, so it's a little more intuitive for the staff, for the public to be able to search. And we believe we will have this up and ready by July. Once that's up, people will be able to search City Council staff reports dating back to 1991, which is when we incorporated. They'll also be able to access all agreements dating back to incorporation, all final versions of resolutions, ordinances, and minutes, building permits. Now, give a caveat on building permits. As you know, the age of the city and housing stock is older than our incorporation date. And so from time to time, we get what we like to call our mystery boxes from the county. Records kind of show up. We go through them. It's a little treasure hunt. So we do have building permits. We have many development files and so forth, but it's a little hit or miss in the older years. But in general, people would be able to look up building permits to the extent that we have them and we've imaged and indexed those. Same with planning case files, which would include use permits, site development plans prior to incorporation through about 2009, public works documents such as street improvement plans, CIP project files, dating generally from incorporation through about 2007, as well as environmental impact reports for major projects. So again, that's something that we're in the final stages of reviewing the documents to make sure what gets pulled up from that portal is available and is actually public records, and then also making sure that the front end is easy and intuitive for a layperson to look up the records they're looking for. And again, we think we'll get that up in July.
Mr. Mayor, to add on to that, of course, the documents we would prefer to be read-only format when someone is searching through our files. But that being said, the question you had specifically as it relates to various forms that City Council members may file or anyone else, the short answer is yes. We certainly could upload those into our system so that people could remotely look at those rather than coming down to the clerk's office. It's an effort that the council could ask us to do today. We clearly comply with state law. As the council is aware, we're required to put certain information up now by the state of California as it, for example, relates to compensation. And so you're compliant with all of those things, but doesn't mean you can't go further. And so if your desire was to have those kinds of forms, we could put those on our website pretty easily. We're always looking to do those kinds of improvements, but we know it's sensitive to the council and we know this item was actually placed on the agenda at the request of Councilmember Nick. But yet the short answer is yes, whatever the council would feel like you'd want to have on that system.
Well, that explains why when I come in, everyone's talking about scanning things. So the scanning is going on. Would there anybody from the public like to speak on this?
We've had a request. Jim Gardner?
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Mayor, council, staff. Yes, the city has done some really good things, digitizing and getting agendas. I was in Brazil for a month, and I was able to stay right on target, looking at everything and reading and watching the things. It's great. And they continue doing great things. I don't think, all due respect for Mr. Nick, and thank you for pushing the sunshine and these things, but I don't think we need the ordinance and the time and the money and everything that will be involved in doing the ordinances, which, from my reading of the situation, have taken a lot of time and been somewhat contentious and spent a lot of money on those things, whereas element by element, which is what the city's doing, I think that's perfectly fine, and they've shown that they can do these things, and I think that's the route to go. Personally, I'd like to see improvements in the compensation, and I'd like to see the FPCC material on there. If you'll take a look at Newport Beach, you'll see Newport Beach has done a terrific job putting more stuff than you'd ever really want to read about anything on their website. And of all the websites I've checked, it's only about 20, but they were the most comprehensive in terms of providing that material. So I just want to support the city's action in this regard. I want to compliment them on what they've done so far, and I'm sure as they move forward in this, they'll do a terrific job. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've had no further requests.
Council?
Well, since I asked this to be put on the agenda, thank you. I'll go first. Thank you for putting all this together, Mr. Smith. There are a few items. Now, I read that Santa Ana, when they were doing this a few months ago, they worked until early hours of the morning on this. I am hoping I can actually do this in 5 minutes. May I go over the items that you pointed out as to the comparisons? I guess this is the right time and place so that we all follow. The very first item, all I ask is that rather than 72 hours posting for the regular meetings, we change that to 96 hours. That would match Santa Ana. We don't need 10 days. That's excessive. We don't. San Francisco, Oakland has 10 days. Somebody else has 2 weeks. Those are excessive. 96 hours, 4 days will suffice. I am going to jump all the way to the second page, bottom of the second page. As far as recording the council sessions, I am glad that I wrote to the council a couple of years ago requesting this. It was added a few months ago. I'm very happy that we are recording now. I am hoping that when we go into our own building in a year and a half or so, I'm hoping we can actually at that point have a better quality videography and maybe broadcast it on Cox. Because not everybody has a computer, not everybody cares to sit behind a monitor. A couple of pages down, the provision is titled City-Level Appellate Review of Discussions to Deny Record Requests. And then under state law, you're kind enough to educate us that the requester that disagrees with the city's decision must file lawsuit. Now, Lake Forest, how Lake Forest does it, in the Municipal Code 12060 provides for appeals of all officials' administrative decisions. Can I beg of you, would you be so kind to tell me what you're telling me, Mr. Smith, is that rather than a lawsuit, rather than someone being able to initiate a lawsuit, they have to first go through the municipal remedies. Is that?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, that's a really good question, Mr. Nick, and that's part of the municipal code that's being brought back to the council in the near future. Right now, you have the opportunity, first off, I need to confirm this, but I think that a city clerk's determination with regard to producing records is an official decision of an administrator, and we'll make that very clear when that code section is brought back to you. You would, rather than having immediately to go file a lawsuit, a writ against the city clerk, you would then instead be able to appeal that decision to the city manager and ultimately to the city council. I think if you wanted to go straight to court, you would have to exhaust that administrative remedy also, but I think most of these cities that have that provision see it as a benefit, because rather than have to go to the time and expense of lawyering up and bringing a writ, you could go within the city structure on up to the city council to seek redress of a decision regarding a public record if you thought that it was made in error.
All right, but then the question would be, how often, to your experience, to your knowledge, how often has it been that a director's decision was reversed by the city manager, or a decision by the city manager was reversed by the council? So what I'm trying to say is, all those levels are within the same house. Isn't it just a waste of time for the appellant to keep appealing to get a higher? Why can't we just? The state allows somebody who is grieved to just file a lawsuit. Why can't we just let people do that?
Mayor and Council, and Mr. Nick, the council could do that. And what I suggest we do is when we bring back that section, which is coming to you next month, let's look at that, and with regard to public records, and decide if that's too much trouble, or if you could just give the person the option of seeking administrative redress or going straight to court.
The option would be ideal.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, and I'll flag that for the council when that comes
I'm all for people to have the option. Great. I'm all for taxpayers to have options. And the last one, which disturbs me actually the most, is most people know that I have a different set of experiences with governments abroad, and I have seen governments do things you would not believe. Now, that said, on that, the very last page, I think it is, and something about a waiver. It says, state law contains a number of exemptions from disclosure. Are you with me yet, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Nick, if you could just tell me which page, 294?
It's, the pages are not numbered, but it's either the last page or the right before it.
The page before the last.
Actually, it's the page before the last.
Okay. Oh, yes, okay, I'm with you now, I'm sorry.
All right, sir.
It's
Beneath
293.
these numbers?
Bottom.
Hold on,
Let's all be on the same page before I go on.
hold on.
Contracts and RFPs?
No, sir. Yes, it's right,
Yes.
right above
That's
contacts.
right.
Yes, sir.
That's
It's right
right
above contacts. on
Yes.
Are we all there yet?
Dwight, do you have it?
Yeah, okay, great. I'm going to read this real quickly. State law contains a number of exemptions from disclosure. Common exemptions include attorney-client privilege, which I'm fine with, law enforcement investigative records, which I'm fine with. This is what troubles me, especially given my background with governments you would not believe. A catch-all deliberative process privilege where the public interest in withholding the record clearly outweighs the public interest in disclosure. I, as part of the government, don't want to be in a position to decide what is good for people to know, what is not good for people to know. I hate that. I have always hated that about government. And in fact, most cities that I'm glad, I'm happy to share with the audience if they care to know. Most cities who have adopted the sunshine ordinance have said no to this. They said, nope, no catch-all or deliberative process exemptions. Again, no catch-all, no catch-all, no catch-all. So I am fine with the attorney-client, of course, law enforcement, obviously, of course. Where I am, as part of the government, in a position to tell what is good for you to know, what is not good for you to know, who am I to say that? So, no. No to catch-all or deliberative process. And that concludes this part of my pleading. It brings me to the second part of why I requested all this. To this point, over the last few weeks, over the last couple of months, I have requested that eventually, well, sooner than later, I didn't say eventually, I have requested that as quickly as it's practical, actually, that all documents that are to be publicly available to be not only available, to be readily accessible online. I'm glad to hear that we're working towards that. There was a grand jury report that was published June 14 of last year. June 14 of last year. I'm looking at a summary of the grading that they gave. I am very disappointed. I am very disappointed to share with all who don't know that out of the 11 cities in South Orange County, according to the grand jury's report produced and publicly available on June 14, out of the 11 cities in South Orange County, we ranked number 9. Laguna Niguel came number 10. Mission Viejo came dead last. They basically graded cities on 3 different categories. Accessibility of the city's website or various web pages. 2, how detailed the information was on executive pay. 3, how detailed and clear the information was on employee compensation. Obviously, everybody got an A for the first one. It's easy to locate a website, it's easy to locate a web page. So there's no doubt everybody got an A. Although for whatever reason Laguna Niguel got a B in that, everybody else got an A. So people can locate our website. Great. And I'm not being facetious. Great. However, our second grade is a C as far as how informative the web page is as to executive compensation. Our next grade is a D as to how informative the webpage is when it comes to employee compensation. When I brought up this Sunshine Ordinance and digitizing publicly available documents a few weeks ago, Mr. Herzog asked, what are we trying to fix? Well, I'm trying to fix C's and D's. I went to school 20-plus years of my life. I, for one, am not used to C's and D's, and I think Lake Forest deserves better than C's and D's. In fact, Costa Mesa got a AAA. Laguna Woods got AAA. We can be Costa Mesa. Why not? We can be Laguna Woods. I want AAA. To that end, let's go back and see what it is that we didn't do to get AAA and get AAA. Let's be the grand jury. Let's be the judge. Let's be the jury. Let's just deliver. Let's deliver the best. We are a fine city, a great county, a great country. God knows how grateful I am.
Councilman Nick,
But we can do better than this.
do you have copies of all that so we could have that? Could I request that you make copy or give that to staff so we can have copies of
I
it?
would love to, of course.
Please, Bob.
Mr. Members of the Council, clearly, the staff has the original request by the grand jury, the city's response letter to the grand jury, as well as their final report. We'd be glad to give that so that Mr. Nick does not have to do that. We'll provide that to the council. I think it would be instructive for the council actually to see the city's responses to the grand jury in terms of that request that they did. And I'd be glad to respond to any questions that you might have once Mr. Nick, Councilmember Nick, is finished with his conversation.
I am actually finished. I just wanted to say once again, I am. You have no idea how grateful I am to each and every one of you, to this country, to the founders. I wake up every morning believing that I am in heaven. If there is heaven, it is here, no doubt. And you people make it heaven. I truly, in my heart, think that people in Lake Forest, people in America, they deserve governments to get AAAs all across. And if I can affect Lake Forest, well, that's a good start. That's a great start. It's my hometown. Thank you.
As Deborah said, I think we're moving to digitalize. Bob, could you address some of the things that we're moving towards to improve where we're at? Thank you.
Mr. Members of the Council, certainly, I think Deborah did a pretty good job of overall sharing that with Council. We do believe that providing the greatest access to city records is what the Council has previously set as a goal and an objective. As you can appreciate, we are probably going to achieve that faster than some other cities that have been around a lot longer, because they have a lot more and older records by which to try and scan into their system. We are requiring more and more electronically. We generate more electronically. That gives us the benefit of having the residents, the public at large, and doesn't necessarily have to be a resident, since anyone can go on our website and search things out. And so we are moving that way. We'll believe that we'll be pretty well live with that system, as Ms. Rose was saying a little bit later, as it relates to it. We're always looking at how we could improve the information that we have on our website, and so we're taking some notes. As it relates to compensation, the one thing I would say that you'd see in the city's response to that issue is oftentimes when cities were trying to I would say, publish what they thought those compensation issues were. What you put on there it can be, I would say, measured in any number of ways. And oftentimes cities would have a lot of conflicting information being provided, either by them that's contrary to another agency that looked at it, contrary to another agency. It had been the city's approach that we would keep consistent with what the state controller requires. And I would also relate that the state controller has looked at what the Orange County Grand Jury did and said, well, maybe we need to improve our system as a state agency, and so you would actually see differences in that on our website because the state controller is now requiring it. Rather than having a lot of conflicting information, we're trying to get it to one so that people are measuring the same thing consistently. I tend to believe that's a statewide issue, so that if you, no matter where you live, you can see that compensation issue being measured the same way, being reported the same way, and not different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. We think it can be improved. We're constantly looking at it. We appreciate Council Members Nick's attention to this issue. We would love A's all the time. Oftentimes, those are subjective assessments by those who want to grade you. Not necessarily always objective. But that being said, we'd be glad to look at all of those issues, as was pointed out even earlier, some of the other forms that you have, and make sure those are on the website. So all of that at Council's direction.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
Do I need to make a motion?
Is there any motion to be made?
Mayor and Council, if I could, given Mr. Nick's comments, there would be some follow-up on these items, and if that's the council's desire, let me indicate what that would be, if that's all right.
Please.
With regard to the 72-hour notice,
To 96.
I'm augmenting that. As a matter of practice, you do go 96 hours, in fact 120, but your code prescribes 72 hours. So to make that official, the council would want to instruct us to bring back an amendment. The meeting recording...
Can you just clarify
yeah.
what you just said as to why we're already over the 72 hours?
The council, at least, posts its agendas on the Thursday before the Tuesday you meet. Whether every other body of the city makes that additional noticing is a question. I think it depends on the calendar and the deadlines for applications. But to make that a code requirement so that it is 5 days as opposed to 3, that would need to go in the code. But your practice now is to do 5 days notice for council.
And Mr. Members of the Council, that's a council policy that the agenda be posted on Thursday night and delivered to the council on Thursday night. Consequently, by practice, you have exceeded the 96 hours for, I've been here, this is my 18th year, you've exceeded it almost 21 years. So that you've done that by practical.
Yes, but if I may, again, I'll draw from experience. I fully realize that today the 96 hours is not relevant because we're actually doing 5 days as opposed to 4 days. I'm not concerned about today. I'm concerned about when I have departed from this from this world, and when you are enjoying retirement, Mr. Dunnick, and Mr. Smith is enjoying retirement, and Mr. Herzog and I are long gone. I am interested in putting an infrastructure in place. So 15 years from now, when none of us are here, there'll be a platform for councils to follow for years to come, unless and until they can improve upon it. That's exactly how this country was founded. Let me remind you, and I shouldn't remind you really, I don't need to, but we must kiss the ground on which our founders walked. That's what I always say. I think to a great extent, this country is as great a country as it is because of how well it was founded. Well, I'm trying to put the foundation in place. So 15, 20 years from now, when we're all long gone, there's an infrastructure in place that they cannot deviate from, even if they wanted to.
So 96 hours, do I hear?
Well,
Yes.
basically, I understand what you're going to do is we've had that written policy for over 20 years, and all you're going to do is put that into the code so that everything will be going out the Thursday before.
I think that's what we do. So if you look to the code section, you'd have the current practice, not some other one. So if you want to get consensus on that, Mayor.
Yeah, I could call a vote.
Call for a vote?
Consensus?
Yes.
State consensus. Yes.
Yes.
You can amend the code to current practice.
All right.
Current
Thank you.
practice was
If I could, Mayor, just keep going. With regard to the recording, I think it was noted that's underway and waiting for a new home to progress. Lake Forest Municipal Code 1.12.060. I made a note as we were putting this together that we need to tell the council when that comes to you soon
need to bring that
what
back.
ramifications that has in this context. So I'll do that.
Okay.
The waiver of exemptions from disclosure, the deliberative privilege one, what I'd like to do is provide you a little bit more information about what that means, so the council can prescribe specifically how much of that you want to give up and how much of it you want to protect. I think the easiest way would be to find out what these cities' codes say about that, and then let you look at that with a side memo. And then if you wanted to either continue that idea or ask that it be brought back separately, once I can give you a full briefing on that.
That is the one that is no catch or catch?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you.
what
If you
that-
could clarify that with us, we just bring it back to us.
Okay, we can do that either through your Thursday packets, or ask that you continue that specific item so that it comes back to council for consideration. That's up to the council, Mayor.
Why don't you give us the information and we'll see what it looks like.
Then you can
Yeah,
tell us if you
that
want
could
that
be,
brought back.
bring it back.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Smith. Which one is faster? Which
Well,
method is faster? We want to get there before I'm too old, so.
It would be faster to keep it on agenda and just continue that element.
Okay, let's go ahead, keep it on the agenda and continue. I'm not getting any younger. I don't know about you guys.
But I do request that I know the issue better, because...
Oh, yeah, we'd brief it up for you, but we can have it on. It will be easy to turn that around if you want to just continue that element.
Consensus? Yeah.
Great.
How much time do you need?
Oh, well, to get what these cities have done and give you the explicit language, I can do that overnight. And I think I do have, it'll take a couple of days, but we'll get it in for your next agenda.
So, which means,
That's why I wanted to check, because, Bob's always said,
Yeah, no,
reports are supposed to...
it's on tap, Mr. Herzog, so, yeah.
Okay, well, just...
so hopefully 2 weeks from tonight we can finalize this?
Yeah, we can do that, yeah. I could take you through the whole thing tonight, but you wouldn't have anything to really
Right.
shake a stick at, so I'll give you that in writing in
Thank
the
you.
next agenda report.
Just clarity, when you bring that back, that's not for finalization, that's for discussion?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
thank
right. We'd have to put it in
Next.
an ordinance form, yes.
Councilman?
This would be a question for either Mr. Dunick or Ms. Rose. With respect to FBPC filings, is there something in the works right now to try to put those online?
Mr. Members of the council, we're looking at all of our forms,
Okay.
but if that's a priority for the council, we'll look at those first, if that's what your desire is.
It's definitely a priority for me. I'd like the public to know who's supported me, what my financial interests are, and so forth, without having to go into City Hall. But
I am very, very much there. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Please, that's also a request from me. Thank you.
so
Sorry, go ahead.
for me, it's a priority. It doesn't have to be the very first thing, but I'd just like to have some sort of idea on when we could get it up there. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that are on a priority list, so I don't want to jump ahead of something that I might not be privy to at this point that would be a higher priority, but I would like to see the opportunity for that up there as early as possible.
And stated July, we're moving towards full implement. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Adam? Councilman Nick?
Clarity.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Dunick.
You
Mayor Pro Tem?
stated something about July. Well, could you repeat that?
Yes, Deborah?
Mayor and members of the City Council, our expected launch date for our public portal into our imaging system is July, when the public would be able to look up city records without coming to City Hall.
Thank you.
Now, excuse me.
Yes.
In July, as you said, the FPPC, I understand, I see, here some of my colleagues are concerned about, mine is real short. But the thing is on the League of California Cities Administrative Policy Committee, I sit on it, and we have the FPPC, and usually the first of each year, we have the FPPC, whomever is the new one, if they have a new one there. And one of the things that we have requested, and it seems like we're going to get it worked in as soon as they get through getting their feet grounded, is not where we do not have to fill out a 460 form three times a year? Twice a year, and you don't have to fill out the form unless you had some changes on your money. So that's something that when you set up this, I'm only telling you because when you set up the system, if they slim like this, we had a few other things we asked them to do for our reporting. If you don't have anything to report, why should we have to go through that? So when you set it up, make sure that you can have something in there for the ones that do not have to report. Some people get money all year round back to force, and some do not. And they were very, very pliable to saying, we see that's a problem, we've heard it statewide. So that's something when you set your programs up, you can take care of that. If I don't get any money, I shouldn't have to report anything each and every time. But there is a new thing. I don't know if you've got your notice or not yet, that if you keep your committee open, you have to pay, I think it's $50 every year to hold your committee open. Like if you haven't, you have some loans that you didn't pay, or you have some monies in it, you're going to have to pay $50 every year starting this year. So that will have to be on there too.
And then that completes item number 17.
I think so. Thanks for that direction.
Next, item 18.
Agenda item 18, discussion regarding the potential implementation of City Council meeting invocations, submitted by City Attorney.
Mayor and Council, the Council asked on January 15th that this issue be brought back at a future agenda to discuss the possible implementation of invocations at the City Council meeting. This staff report includes a summary of case law California case law relating to invocations in public meetings, most notably a discussion of the lawsuit of Rubin against the City of Burbank. That lawsuit has served as a guideline for cities in deciding, first of all, whether to have the practice of public invocations, and if that practice is adopted, to set parameters to make sure that those fall within the parameters of that were set by the California Supreme Court there. As I said, this issue is left to the Council to discuss. Cities that don't have invocations don't have to worry about the risks outlined in this case, but those that do have followed a series of best practices that I've outlined at the bottom of page 2. I meant to make it clear in this staff report that the procedure identified on page 4 isn't one that we've tailored or proposed for the City of Lake Forest. That is just a model policy that some cities have used to implement those guidelines from the Rubin case. If the Council wanted to pursue this initiative, then we'd ask that you give direction, and then whatever change in policy the Council might dictate, we would bring to effect with a policy tailored to that direction and the City of Lake Forest.
Thank you. I guess I'll for the public to speak, please.
Carla Westfall, followed by Sasan Darian.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Carla Westfall, and I'm one of 2 co-presidents of the Orange County chapter of Americans United for Separation of Church and State. I'm here tonight to urge you not to adopt the practice of including invocations at the start of your City Council meetings. I ask you this for several reasons. First, you have no authority to do this. The people of Lake Forest elected you to run the city, not to speak for them on matters of religion, and it would be incredibly presumptuous of you to do so. Second, it would be disrespectful to do so. It would be disrespectful to non-believers and members of minority faiths who feel excluded by the practice. It would be disrespectful to people of faith who feel you are using something they consider sacred as a tool to further your political careers. It would be disrespectful to anyone you invited to deliver these invocations, since any invitation would have to be accompanied by a warning not to include, quote, any non-generic reference to God. That quote is taken directly from the proposed policy. It would be disrespectful to all who believe that faith, or the lack of it, is a deeply personal matter, and one of those areas of our private lives where the government simply has no business. Third, it would expose the city to criticism, conflict, and possibly litigation. If you desire guidance from a divine being, There is nothing to prevent you from asking for that guidance in a private prayer before the meeting starts. Surely this is the wiser course, and I urge you to adopt it.
Sasan Darian, followed by Ted Pearl.
Could you state where you guys live as speakers?
Yes, I live in Lake Forest.
Thank you.
I live in Jenner, Lake Forest. So I'm a Lake Forest resident. Thank you, everyone, for your time. As I said, I live in Lake Forest here, and this issue has come up. Just 3 general points I wanted to speak before I talk about a little bit personally. Why is this so important for me? And I believe it's also important for, I think, all of us here in Lake Forest, especially Councilmember Nick. I don't know your background, but it seems like you've been somewhere in a different country where you felt government oppression, but I understand this is a small thing in the grand scheme of things. We have most of this country, they are believers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But first of all, I believe that it's not the government's job to speak for, I believe that we have to value the Constitution, separation of church and state, our founding fathers. You have a beautiful picture right there behind you. And I believe that in order to upheld, what has made America so great is separation of church and state. And I think that at the end of the day, when we start creeping and putting religion or invocations to the public sphere, it takes away from that. And we also, like I said, there's people of all faiths, whether we're non-believers, religious, non-religious. I think it's important that we understand that the separation is very, very important. And as we mentioned, as you guys mentioned about the litigation, as a Lake Forest member, there's no doubt that there's a lot of lawsuits going on things like this. So it's going to cost us tax money as a member of Lake Forest, since I am a resident of Lake Forest. And again, now on a personal basis, I'm an American. I've been here since I was 3 years old, but I'm an Iranian American. I'm originally from Iran. I've been back to Iran, and I see what happens when government starts to impose religion. Again, this is just an invocation. I understand it's a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but when government starts to impose religion, it starts to creep up, and it starts to create oppression. And I think, I'm not sure, again, we're Nick, I don't know, Romanian? Iran. Oh, you're Iranian too? So we know, originally being from Iran, what government oppression does, and I think that as Thomas Jefferson said, history, I believe, furnishes no example of a priest-ridden people maintaining a free and civil government. And I think that's very, very important that we all consider here, whether we're Christian, Jewish, atheist, Muslim, anything like that, that we value the separation of church and state. And I believe this is very important as a resident of Lake Forest. Thank you.
Ted Pearl.
Good evening, Mayor Volks, Mayor Pro Tem McCullough, council members. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm a 19-year resident for Lake Forest, raised my sons here, and I would tend to steer clear of anything that could bring us towards a situation paralleling the Rubin situation. I don't think we need litigation for both taxpayer purposes and publicity purposes. As I said, I raised my sons here in a very diverse community where on my block there were Christians, Jews, Muslims, atheists, Buddhists, people of all faiths, and perhaps of no faiths. Therefore, it just goes to show you, and I think all of us, that faith is an intensely private and personal matter that does not necessarily need to be brought up here in what is our secular temple, in which right here we have the American flag, to which we say the Pledge of Allegiance, which I said every morning as a teacher, where we bring up the idea of God in a very non-sectarian way. I don't think we need to bring the forces of sectarianism into this secular temple of ours where we do the people's business. I don't think we need to bring up anything that would lead to controversy and or litigation. Again, publicity that would reflect negatively on our city, perhaps publicity that would cost us money that we don't need to spend, and perhaps publicity that might offend members of the community who may be of particular faith, that may be in the minority, or who may be of no faith. So therefore, I would urge that we keep the status quo and keep the curtain between church and state separate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We've had no further requests.
Council.
Anyone else?
No, is there anybody else that would like to speak? Well, if I may, since I'm the one that put this forth, I think that faith is a deeply personal thing, but we have been elected to the City Council, and my faith means a lot to me. But it's not my faith that drives me. It's my wanting to do good and always seeking His guidance. So it's something that we will take into consideration. But the invocation requirements and procedures that were laid out on page number 4, Council, is something that I think that with these parameters, having speakers that come in that are approved. But I would like to add one thing, that if we have a vacancy or someone doesn't show up, that we would take volunteers from the dais. That's my only input right now, so, Council, I'll open it up. Peter.
I appreciate the members of the public have come, and I think we should also indicate we have received 2 electronic comments from the public. And quite frankly, in the 18 years I've been on the council, this is the first time we've received public comments on this issue. There may have been comments from the council members, but never from the public. And these two comments from Lake Forest residents also oppose this idea. I think one, speaks very eloquently. And I'll quote it for the record. From my perspective, prayer is a very private and personal thing, not something to be done in the name of God for public display. What purpose will a prayer before the council meeting serve? Will it prove to everyone that you are a better Christian than everyone else? The most meaningful forms of praising God are done alone, when you speak to Him directly and through your heart, not before a political stage. Doing so belittles our shared belief in Christ and serves only to turn our faith into a political symbol. Please consider your decision carefully and know that God only needs you to show your faith in your own time. I would also ask that you please consider and protect the religious freedom of everyone in this country as defined by the Constitution. It is the reason we cherish the freedoms imparted on us by the founding fathers of this nation. And I know, as Mayor Pro Tem McCullough recalls at her prayer breakfast, this concept of religion being a very private issue is something that, my family does believe in. And she had quite a conversation with one of my family members on that exact point. And so I appreciate the public's comment about religion being a very personal thing for each individual. And I think that's something that's very important to comment upon. And additionally, as I mentioned, so far, none of the public has come forward requesting us to do this to this point. And I think that's important to remember as well. And then, quite frankly, Mr. Mayor, I'm definitely well aware of your faith, and it means a lot to you, and I appreciate that. And I think most of the people in this room do have some sort of faith that they look at. And then, as the one commentator mentioned, there are certainly atheists, and our community is broad-based. Obviously, there's the Christian component, but I also have numerous friends who are the Jewish faith. We also have the Hindus, the Muslims, Sikhs, and a whole variety of religions as well. And that's shown in our demographics of the broad spread of it. And so I think this idea of the religious aspect being very personal, and again, I mentioned, I certainly appreciate your deep faith, and I appreciate that, but even in your own comment, we went over the line. You said you were always seeking His guidance. That's a specific religion. That's how technical, unfortunately, in this country, the courts have gotten into this interpretation. And so that one comment and some of the earlier comments when this was put on the agenda actually probably put us in some jeopardy in that regard. And so I think, really, I think we need to take, our community members' comments should be the foremost thing we listen to, because we're actually here not to do what we believe or not to do what we may think, but to represent the public. That's our job. We have 78,000 plus people in Lake Forest. We've approved additional housing to add 12,000 more. That's our obligation. When you become elected, you're a public servant, and actually, to some extent, you lose some of your own personal flexibility. And so our responsibility is not to our beliefs and not to what we may hold. Our responsibility is to all 78,000 people of Lake Forest. Our responsibility is to the city at large. And I think that is one area that I think is very important to remember. And I think we need to respect that more than even our own faiths when we're serving as elected officials. Now, once you leave here, I think everyone should exercise their own personal faith as the way they see it, or not if they so choose. But you do that at home or in your house of worship, whatever the case might be. Some people are very deeply in their faith. They don't go to church. They do it from their house. They do it with their community or whatever the case might be. There's no set form to it. And additionally, then, as far as what was set forth just on a practical side, to me, since this was raised by the council, this should not be something we turn over to staff. We have worked very hard in this city to keep our staffing to a minimal level, to keep them focused on the broader community. And I don't see this particular item as something that is a role for the staff to take on in trying to sort out and find people and get them trained and make sure they don't violate any of the constitutional provisions that do exist. If the council is actually interested in this, then I think it, and I'll also note, I've been on a lot of committees and commissions around this county and around this state. And all of those that I've served on, where there is an invocation, is actually done by the board members, not by the public and not by any sector of the religious community. So I would suggest that, I mean, if the city council is interested in any way in pursuing this, that it be done not as outlined in the staff report. And in fact, if that, is something they're interested in, I mean, I think we have a person on the council who has shown her ability to do, and has a strong faith, but has the ability to do things without getting near or over that line. And I think that should be the sole person, quite frankly, that were to do it. But I admit, when I came in, I had one opinion, but when I read this woman's comments and then thought about what the public has said over 20 years, and actually not said, it seems to me that I think I will stand with the public, and based upon what they have clearly set out in writing, on this issue, even though that was not my initial intent. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwight?
Thank you. I often put things in a broader context, because in a broader context, often things mean a lot more than they would otherwise. They sometimes mean something different than they would have otherwise. But before I go there, Mr. Herzog says that he must listen to the wish of the people. I believe that too, except I listen to the wish of the people, period. Not when the public happens to, not when the majority of the public happens to say or want what I say or want. I listen to them as I am representative of those people. On March 1, again, I speak from experience. On March 1, 2011, I was here in the audience, members of the public. The room was almost full, and I have the videotape of it, by the way, in case somebody is interested. Members of the public came one after another, after another, after another, and spoke against something that the city was doing at the time. The only person, or the only people who spoke in favor of the issue, were the people who were going to financially profit from that matter. And yet, Mr. Herzog, being the mayor at the time, upon the conclusion of the public comments...
Attorney, this is a matter of litigation with the city.
I am not saying anything that is not public records, Mr. Herzog.
I think you need to comment upon whether or not this discussion can go forward. This gentleman has sued the city over that specific hearing. He has lost in court and now is on appeal and has forced us to hire another attorney.
I have not forced you to hire another attorney, Mr.
About
Herzog.
what is the situation here on what we can and
Mr.
cannot
Smith is
discuss
bullying us
in
again.
connection with that litigation.
That is not true, sir. I have not forced you to hire another attorney. You chose to hire another attorney. I had no part in that decision. Furthermore, what I'm saying is publicly available information. I am not going into the case. I'm just merely reflecting upon what transpired here on March 1, 2011. If I said anything that is not true, somebody tell me that. Otherwise, I am entitled to tell what is true.
Yeah, Mayor, I think the question is whether a discussion of the specific permit or application in question is appropriate. Mr. Mick, my preference would be that you speak to the issue generally and not to the particular
No,
permit.
I wasn't. Did I mention alcohol? Did I mention anything? I just said, Mr. Herzog, listen to the public one after another and issued and rendered a motion in spite of the very wish of the public in general. And interestingly, at this point, he listens to the public and he changes his mind over something that somebody wrote earlier today. Well, my convictions are strong enough whereby one paragraph would not change my mind. The mind that can be changed with one paragraph is probably not a sound mind. Anyway. Now, let's talk about this issue, and let's talk about this issue. I am not afraid of litigation. If we do this, it may cause us to go into litigation and spend taxpayers' money. I am not afraid of spending money, not even my own money, and I have proven that when I believe in the cause. But I really think this would be the wrong cause. I really think we shouldn't do this, not because I'm afraid of litigation. Litigation for the right cause, there's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't do this because I come from a society, I come from a culture that I saw with my own eyes what happened when church and state were combined. Tehran was the Paris of the Middle East through the 1970s. We saw what happened in Beirut, and then it was followed by what happened in Tehran. Religion. I believe our founders of this great country, and I love you people, believe me, I'm an American by choice. Again, like I said, if there were heaven, this is it. I'm living it. I'm living the American dream. I believe our founders put an infrastructure in place that called specifically for separation of church and state. My mother is Christian. My father didn't believe in God. My wife is half Jewish. I mean, I respect all faiths. I respect all religions. I respect those who don't have a religion. But I'm part of the government. This is not a church. This is not a mosque. I respect those institutions. But equally, I respect keeping faith and religion above and away from public policy, away from government. So as much as I care for our mayor, which I do tremendously, this man is, if I were to count on one hand the people who I admire the most, he is surely one of those people. I enjoy being his friend. I respect him tremendously. He is a man of God. He is a man of faith. He is just good people, our mayor is. It breaks my heart. I swear to you, it breaks my heart that I cannot support him on this. But I can't. We gotta keep church and the state separate. Thank you.
Councilman?
Sure, I'll keep my comments brief. I was fortunate to grow up in a family where my parents had lots of different connections. A good friend of my parents actually happened to be the chaplain of the U.S. Senate. We have a long tradition in this country of invocations, as Councilman Herzog mentioned. He has been a part of different boards or commissions throughout the county that have had invocations. I think that what City Attorney Mr. Smith has put forth is something that makes sense. I too would prefer that we didn't have to exert too much staff time, preferably none, but it seems like in following with case law here that it's something that we should do. I do support the mayor's initiative here, and that's all I have to say at this moment.
Mayor Pro Tem's taken recess. If you just bear with us for 1 minute, please. Thank you. Yes, you did. Okay. It's Mayor McCullough. Calling back to order. Thank you very much. Calling council back to order.
Sorry I had to leave, but I didn't want to interrupt you, so I didn't call for my break of convenience. I just went on and convenienced myself. Thank you. Just for clarity, number one, there has been no motion or anything?
Correct.
Good. I'd like to make my comment, and then I'd like to make a motion, if you please. Number one, I believe that the United States of America is a very diverse country, whether we're talking religion, origins of people, or whatever. From the age of about 8, I was raised in a Jewish community. When schools integrated, I went to a Jewish school. And I could not bring lunch because you may bring something that wasn't kosher. And I had to travel way out of my area, say like maybe a little past Santa Ana, to get anything that wasn't kosher. That means standing here. So I was raised in a manner to respect all people. Some of you may have not been here last meeting when I read a culture speech that I had written that I carry with me because sometime I need to say it. I need to read it. Did I read it last time? So for you that weren't, you can ask me and I'll read it for you one day. But one of the biggest problems that I have with this, the reason I'm going to ask that if we need to bring it back, you got to tweak this a whole bunch, because I'm also a licensed ordained minister that has been licensed and ordained for going on 40 years now. I know some of you may think I'm not quite that old, but I am. In fact, I'm probably the oldest person in this room. That could be a blessing. And one of the things that I know as a citizen and as a free person that disturbs me is if a person says the prayers, if you put in the system that you have been proposed here, and they say the prayers, and by any chance in their beliefs, if they say Muhammad or Buddha or the Father or Jesus Christ or whatever, not only would they not ever be allowed to say the prayers, they would not, here it says, they would not even be able to speak at a city council meeting again. I think that this needs a lot more thought. For me, as a licensed ordained minister, even Councilmember Herzog knows that I've been asked to do prayers at other places. For me, I generally turn it down most of the time that people ask me, especially, and a lot of other pastors do, especially when it has this in it. Because as a free person in this country, and as a licensed ordained minister, I like to be able to pray in my way. And mind you, when I studied to become a minister, I had to study just about every faith that's here in America, and the ones that I didn't have to study to pass the test, I have studied anyway. And I've lived around some all faiths, and I spoke and affiliated. I go to the mosque about once a year and stuff. I go to all the different faiths. So many of the ministers, if they cannot pray in their way, they would turn it down. But just so happen there may be some that would not, and they would want to come and pray, and they made a mistake because they were wrapped up into their faith of their belief, and they said the name. According to this, they could never speak again. And I think that's more like a double-barrel shotgun killing an ant. So I think that for me, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this and some more work be done on it, and then bring it back. And I can't say that I would be able to support it or not support it, but I would like some more work to be done on it, because I know that we probably didn't catch this. Whoever wrote this up probably didn't catch this right here. And so if I could get a second, I'd like to make a motion to bring it back, and we each take and look at it and maybe tweak it some more and see what we can do. Because right now, in the fashion that it's in, especially with us having to follow this rule, and then this right here, I would like it to bring back. Is that possible for me to get a second?
I'm not exactly clear what the motion is, so maybe we can...
I'm asking for it to go back over this.
Okay.
Because I belong to Pastors Alliance. In fact, not just here in this state, across the country. I even was a part of a Pastors Alliance missionary evangelist that was national and international. California, it was Women's International Ministries, and we would meet twice in America and once in some foreign country. And because I know so many pastors, I've ministered where I worked with Billy Graham and different Hare Krishnas, whatever. I've worked with all types of religion. My problem is this line right here. As a pastor, as a licensed ordained minister, it offends me that I would not be able, and as an American, and as an elected official, I would not be able to put something in place that a person would not ever be able to speak again. That's not America. And I know that it wasn't meant like that, but that's how I read it. Did you read this line right here? I know it's not meant to be like that, but that's the intent of it. And like Nick said earlier, if we're gone from here 10, 15 years from now, I hope I'm gone before then, but if we're gone from here and somebody could use this line to discriminate against someone, I have came from a culture here in America that and I'm an older person before immigration, and this line right here could get somebody discriminated against, and some of the other things I noticed in here. I would like to ask for it, for me, I would take and go back over to what I feel comfortable with, what I don't, and I would like for each one of you to do that, and then for it to be brought back. If that's not the case, then I would have to oppose it strongly, because I feel that it have implications of discrimination according to someone's personal beliefs. And they slip up one time and say, in the Father's name, or in Buddha's name, or whatever. That's what this line implies. It may not imply for the 5 of us now, or for our city attorney and stuff, but someone after us, that's what it implies, that you would be able to bar them from speaking or praying again. I'm not going to be a part of that.
I will second that, to bring it back. We represent the city of Lake Forest. There's chambers and elected officials that represent far more than what we represent here in Lake Forest, that open in invocation, whether it be the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives, the Board of Supervisors, Orange County Transportation Corridor, that OCTA. But I will, in respect for my Mayor Pro Tem, second that to bring back. So I call for the vote.
Mayor, just to clarify what our charge is if the motion should carry, I'd appreciate clarification on whether the council, let me speak to the narrow issue because I know what Ms. McCullough is talking about, and she's been kind enough to point us there. I think she's talking about the last sentence in Section 3 of the sample policy that says that if speakers violate this policy, then they're not invited back to give the invocation again. I'd be happy to...
Here it says, not only that, it says right here, is that secular prayers are not permitted, but they would not be able to even speak at a city council meeting. Right
on
here.
page 2,
Right
top of page.
299, page 2.
Mayor and Council, that's an excerpt from the Rubin case. What that means is that if the court ordered the city of Burbank to tell people that if they violated the invocation policy, not speaking during public comment, but during the invocation, then there had to be consequences for that. And so that's what the model policy provides, is that if you do that during the invocation, any member of the public under the case and under Section 4 of the sample policy can pray during public comment, and there's nothing the city can say about that. But the remedy applies to someone who violates the invocation during that official portion of the meeting. But we could come back and explain more about that remedy. We just want to know whether the rest of the policy the council would want ready for discussion or possible action. If you could clarify that so we know which way to bring it.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, in all due respect, since I'm throwing it out here, the case itself puts a damper on your freedom when you follow the 1, 2, 3 on it. There are several things in that. And then, yes, you didn't fold that in, but up here in this portion, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to get to you earlier.
That's fine. That's
to get more clarity. But also up here in this portion up here, and then give me these 5 here. But still, the overlay is this. So you got to do it. You got to fit within this perimeter, and then you give me this. And when I go through all of these, that don't. It's not something I could really wrap my head around. That's how I would like to leave it for who comes behind me. Because someone comes behind me and they're vindictive or just stuck on stupid on some denomination that comes here, or non-denomination, or atheist, then they could use that. And that is not the intent of, I don't feel that that's the intent that we meant. I would like to have an opportunity for, in fact, I'll even get with you and get with my colleagues, and so that we can tweak it where we make sure that little loophole is taken care of.
The part about the remedy,
I just really feel that needs to be taken care of. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to support it or not support it. I just mean that those are the things that I seen was error, and I didn't get you, so I couldn't get a clarity on that. And I didn't get you either.
You get clarification?
Yeah, we'll bring back I'm sorry.
We're going to bring
Counsel,
black, huh?
If the
Okay, well,
motion
he knows
passes,
more than you do on this.
We'll bring back clarification on that remedy and whether it's entirely necessary or not by the case.
Thank you.
And then the council can either act or not.
Okay. Okay. All in favor?
Do we have a motion on the
Yeah.
floor? And it's been seconded?
As I've indicated, I agree with, what the public has indicated and actually with Mr. Nick's conclusion about not moving forward with this. But I would ask the council that if the other three do wish to move forward, that you also do keep an account, and I think the next staff report should also, because it kind of highlighted one policy. There's other ways to do this, and I truly would appreciate if people would give deep consideration to not putting this on the staff. If the three want to have this, then they should take responsibility for doing it. That's really kind of the fair thing to do. And this should not be staff's responsibility to put them in the middle of trying to sort out, all the ins and outs and trying to locate people and making the rotation and doing all the stuff that goes on. And so I would just ask that you consider that. And, so as you move forward.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry, if that could be part of the consensus, we'd be happy to bring back some discussion of that.
I'm fine with discussing it, but, my concern is just the perceived fairness. If there were certain members who were making that determination and reaching out to others, and I don't want to put it on the staff either.
Oh, no,
I
actually,
prefer not to, but-
let me clarify. No, what I'm talking about and what I've seen most often, as opposed to what's been outlined here, is that it's the council members or the board members that do the invocation, not that they then choose somebody. That then it would be, you three that would give the invocation, and staff wouldn't have anything to do with it, and we wouldn't be calling in outside people. And that's the way I have mainly seen this done. And while you indicated I've been on boards that have done that, it was there before I got there, and I was not going to make an issue of whether or not that should continue. That was what they had decided before, and I just left it alone. And it wasn't so much, so there really wasn't a discussion about it. But so my suggestion is what you consider is that then you do it yourselves, not go out and find somebody, but you actually provide the invocation, and that's what I've seen most of the time. Again, I'll vote no on the motion mainly because I don't think this should move forward.
I'd like to include that in discussion.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, if I could, that's a good issue. I think you both are speaking about the same thing. Just the access to the opportunity is something that we'd like to speak to. If someone from the public said, I'd like to share that access, subject to the constraints, we'd probably want to recommend that you allow that.
Okay.
So let me bring that back with the concept you raised, Mr. Herzog.
So that'll be the motion made.
Yeah. I could support that because I sit on a lot of different committees. We do it all different ways, but oftentimes it is the people on that is the board, and sometimes the chair or the president, they will call for somebody. And also, you have the right, it doesn't just go back to floor, you have the right to say, I do not want to do it, and pass. So that needs to be looked at also. I don't feel anybody should be forced to say prayers or some kind of invocation, regardless to what denomination it is. It should be surely their option. And even me as a pastor, I've turned down many times. I say, no, I'll pass, at some of the different things I sit on. So I just think that this was a good start because you brought it back, but I do feel that it needs a lot more thought put in it. And each one of us should get back to, so the staff don't, I do agree with Peter, I'm always talking about don't overdo the staff. And I believe that if you have a suggestion or something, I believe we need to get it to staff so they don't have to dig that out. You can give them what's on your mind concerning it, and then they can just present it back to us for discussion.
Yes. You have those points. I'll call for the vote. For the consensus, put it back, bring it back. Okay. Aye.
Yeah, you've got a motion. The clerk would like you to vote on that. That's
okay. Yeah, you call for the vote. Aye.
Sure, I'll discuss anything.
Agenda item 19, legislative and regulatory matters submitted by city manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this is a regular item. Staff has given you just a summary of some things that we thought might be of interest that have been, bills that have been introduced and hearings that have been held. We have nothing further to add, but be glad to answer any questions the Council may have.
One of the bills here is AB 265. And we didn't have a text of it here, but so if everybody wants to read that, then that'd be fine. But I did read it, and this goes to we do have the Parks and Rec Commission looking at a dog park, and one of the things we did when we got into the skate park discussions was look into the liability issues. And one of the things that was very important to the cities in California was to get a statute such as this one on dog parks for the skate parks that makes it very clear that the cities are not liable. Which in this case, what the bill says is if a dog bites somebody, or there's another dog-related incident, that the city's not liable for that. So I certainly support the bill, but it probably would be good to have that on our next agenda so everybody can see it in case there's any questions or discussions. But that's one it seems like we need in place since we have the Parks and Rec Commission looking into things.
Yes, go ahead. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of things that I'd like for the legislative to keep on watch, and one is a police chief bill, AB 801. And I spoke to a chief that was at my meeting after I finished the call, and he says that this is pertaining to the release of people from our prisons back into their counties. And our chief may know that this bill had to be tweaked, and there's another bill floating out there that we need to look at. I think it's one, but it may not be. But if you look under the police chief association or whatever it is for the whole state, on this AB 801, some counties did not. Fortunately, I believe that our county is already covered. They did not make sure that the search procedure follow with the person, because most cities, when they release someone from jail, most counties don't have that on there, and they have. So we need to see if that got finalized. Also on the one, I see you shaking your head. You know of it, so I'd like for you to put that on our scope and make sure that that's in there. And also, there's two more redevelopment after the fact bills that's going supposed to fix redevelopment. I'm hoping that we keep a real close watch on redevelopment. There's a lot of fixes that's coming up as bills, but some of them aren't really fixes. They're problems, and I didn't get the number on it, and they didn't hear me when we stopped the phone conference that I needed more. So if you look under the redevelopment or oversight, you'll see that there's two more that just came up that's supposed to be a fix. And one of the people involved, maybe you can catch it by, I think it was Steinberg was one of them. So I know a lot of times you can dig it up on there, but if we can keep a report on that, put that on our watch list so we can see what's going on with that. That's all I have on legislation.
No further action.
Agenda item 20, request for appointment, League of California Cities, Association of California Cities, Orange County, and/or the Orange County City Selection Committee, submitted by City Clerk.
Council. Okay.
On the city selection, it's only voting for the president and the vice president, isn't it?
At this time, city manager's report.
I have nothing further this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, council. Councilmember Herzog.
Well, what I was wondering, almost every warrant register, we have the graffiti vandalism, as the Mayor Pro Tem likes to say, charge. And obviously, one of the best ways to prevent that kind of activity is to have the walls, have vines on the walls. And so what I was wondering, if during the budget discussions, if we could identify, as far as the city walls, obviously we can't do anything with the private walls, or maybe we can, but start with the city walls. As far as identify which ones aren't, because there are a lot out there that do have vines on them, and then maybe we can get some sort of an idea as to what it might cost to plant all that, so we can take a one-time, long-term solution to this graffiti issue, as opposed to, well, we do a good job on graffiti abatement, but it's an ongoing cost that apparently is not going to stop. So maybe we can look for more of a long-term solution than just a continual monthly activity we're doing right now. So if we could kind of chat about that during the budget, I'd appreciate it. And then just the other thing is, this is a general comment. Since December, at every single council meeting, there has now been a personal comment made about another council member. And I will not be specific at this time, but that is very tiresome. And it's also not very productive. And in fact, in one of the comments this evening, that was a 4-to-1 vote. So if one council member was not of sound mind, then apparently 4 weren't. And that's just not productive. You know, it's not a question of who's your best friend or not. It's moving forward. And so I hopefully in the future, the kind of personal comments, disagreement is one thing. I mean, I've been married 35 years and disagree with my wife all the time. My son more often, but, you know, that still works. So, and, you know, there's no need for that kind of activity. And that's true, you know, in whatever organization you're in. I didn't agree with Richard Dixon or Mark Teddemer all the time. We voted against each other all the time. And yet, you know, we were obviously close. And I voted with and against Catherine McCullough numerous times. Same with Marcia Rudolph. Same with Helen Wilson. The problem we have in Sacramento and Washington is that, you know, if you vote no, then they take it personally. This isn't personal. And, you know, I think it's interesting that Don Wagner said at the convention this weekend that, quote, "We need to recognize that if somebody doesn't agree with us on one issue, that doesn't mean that they aren't going to agree with us on 5 others." And what I found over the years, and since everybody likes to say that, you know, Catherine and I don't get along, which is untrue, but, you know, we vote against each other, we get along fine, and move on to the next issue. And 95% of the time, we vote the same way. And that's true with every council member I've worked with. And I've worked with many, of a lot of different kinds. And I will continue to do that. And hopefully, in the future, you know, that will be more the tenor that we see on this council.
Councilmember Nick?
Thank you. Since I was a kid, I couldn't help it. When I see hypocrisy, I call it for what it is. One time I did that, I was 15 years of age. They punched me in the mouth so bad I could not have solid food for more than 1 week, 8 days to be exact. Because I said wrong, because I saw wrong when I said it as I saw it. So people don't change. It is what it is. The only real concern that I have, and that's for my honorable city attorney, Mr. Smith. For the last couple of days, Mr. Smith, I have been called 4 times by 4 different individuals, 2 of them reporters. One of them actually wrote me this afternoon voice of OC, Nick, forgot the last name, Garda. Anyway, I think it was last time we were here 2 weeks ago tonight. We deliberated, discussed some development project. There was a $12,500 fee that I and a couple of other council people waived because we had our reasons, and I can get into those if need be again. Now I'm told that it was not the right time because people had not been noticed properly that such action could have been taken or was to be taken or may have been taken. In fact, Mr. Herzog told the reporter, and it's online now, Mr. Herzog told the reporter that something to the effect that that was not the right time or something like that. So if I could beg of you, I am confident, I am 100% confident that if it were not the right time for us to take any action, supporting it or waiving it or whatnot, I'm confident you would have told us accordingly. So, again, I'm confident whatever action we took, I'm not talking about the action itself, I'm talking about the timing of it. I'm confident it was the right time for us to decide one way or another. Can I look to you to clarify that, Mr. Smith?
Could I do that, Mayor and Council? Because I also had an opportunity to comment on the issue. I wasn't told that there was concern on anybody's part, any interest group's part about it. But if I could just for a minute, the issue that Mr. Nick is referring to had to do with the council's action at its February 5th meeting to eliminate, at least for now, one requirement of the application for development. As I understand the issue, by the way, I'm disappointed there's disappointment out there over this issue because my personal commitment and the commitment of this council is to err always on the side of openness and on the side of compliance with the Brown Act when there's any question. In fact, I think if you look at the item on invocations in public, you'd be hard-pressed to find any city or its lawyer that discuss so openly the issues that were revealed there. And your manager and I didn't hesitate to present that broad report to you, and this council didn't even hiccup when you took up the issues and discussed them. So my approach is to err on the side of openness. Callaware is a group that we interact with a lot as the largest public agency firm in the state. I'm working on putting together a state bar day of Brown Act discussions where Callaware speakers are featured, including Mr. Frankie, who was quoted. So it's disappointing to have this dialogue with them indirectly through the newspaper. To the substance, their concern, as I understand it, was that item number 24 talked about the discussion of letters submitted by Brookfield Residential and Truemark in December. When you look at this council's agendas, the green sheets, if you wanted, between items 15 and 16, everything that follows is under the heading of discussion/action items. And if there's any doubt what could follow, the little box there says the following matters are for City Council consideration/discussion/action. I think, the Brown Act also allows our brief general descriptions to incorporate by reference other documents. And this description on its face incorporates the letter by Truemark and the letters by Truemark and Brookfield, which urged action, not just discussion. So I think in that context, it was clear to me, I hope clear to the council, it was obviously clear to members of the public that those that list of action items was fair game for the council's consideration. The scope of what happened was very minor. The entitlements weren't approved, neither were development agreements. The interim application package was tweaked by the council, so I thought the magnitude was pretty small. So that's where I was coming from when they asked me how we done in terms of compliance. I do appreciate the perspective and the prism that they've applied to this matter, and of course we'll use that input as we develop agendas down the road. If there's any demand presented by Calaware or any stakeholder that thinks they missed their moment on February 5th, of course I'll present that to the council. You can look at it. I don't think there's any shame in doing a redo if there was prejudice based on that description, but I think it was adequate, especially in the context of an agenda that twice says that you can anticipate action on items that follow. So thanks for that chance to respond.
I thank you, sir. As I said a couple of months ago, we're blessed to have you. Thank you, sir.
No comments.
I had a lot of activity, so I'll have to try to go fast. If you want any information on anything I'm saying, you can ask me later or get back to me, or ask staff and they'll get it from me. Number one, I'm just going to call off the things I went. I got a couple of things I need to comment on. I attended the Newport Beach watershed, the Little Leagues throughout the balls, the mayor throughout the ball, and we also had some very good vendors there. So we need to think about getting those at some of our park things. I don't feel we have enough. And in the summer when it's hot, we definitely need some snow cones out there to help cool people. OTCA special needs, the special needs fares for excess is going up, as well as some other things. The Oversight Committee, as you've seen in your reports, that we approved moving forward in that according to the state law. I attended the OC DUI Summit, and it was wonderful, a lot of information. The next one will be on violence. There have Supervisor Todd Spitzer is having a series of them, and in that he's asked, there were several mayors and councils and mayor pro tems there, as well as tons of policemen, of course, and the MARC, they now have a system of, they've came up with to tell not only alcohol but drugs. As you know, our children, or most of our children, more so than adults, are poly users of a large proportioned, that means multiple types of drugs. It's offered to them. They'll say, it makes you feel like this, and they just down it. They'll take it or drink it or take it. And it's not just alcohol. So they're trying to get more sophistication, because when you go into a hospital, and the hospitals are involved, you go in a hospital and you are a poly user, they don't know, they cannot tell right off all the different types you have, especially when they're prescription drugs, and some children are stealing them from other children's homes or parents or grandparents or whatever. So they asked the mayors and mayor pro tems and councils that were there, they asked us, would we be a part of a special task force they're going to make up in getting the hospital representatives. Of course, police and probation and coroners will be involved, and they want the elected officials because they want to try and make sure each one of us are a part of doing for the getting involved. So they're going to try and go. Todd has big ideas. He usually make it too. They're going to try and go to each city and make sure each city have something in place, working with the police or sheriff, whichever one is in that city. So this is also going hand in hand with the chief of police throughout our state of what they're trying to do also, but also the component of violence, bullying, spousal, and violence period will be taken care of, be folded into this. This was just the first system, the first summit, and there will be others to follow. And I said yes, and the mayor of Missionville and a couple of others that was there, we all said yes, we would be a part of that team when they get it together. To let my colleagues know, so I'll be giving reports on it, but everybody's welcome to come when they have it. I went to a groundbreaking in Irvine, and it's affordable housing, it's adaptable housing, and very low and moderate. Beautiful project. Jamboree do a lot of projects of affordability, and this I can't even count how many I've been to for Jamboree because I am on housing. I am the chair of the housing authority, so I had to go to cut the ribbon and stuff. And I'm hoping that we possibly could get some Jamboree housing here because they do it at a good price. And the price, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it is affordable, and that's something that's hard to say here in Orange County. But the monies that came up to the plate, the good thing about Jamboree, they come with their own funding. U.S. Bank funds them, and they have mental health. We put in 20 units of funding. We can put up to a third of the project funding in, and Orange County Housing Authority and a few others, and of course the Irvine Company. El Toro Road, they had a El Toro Road I-5 widening. It's supposed to widen from Alicia up to El Toro Road. And I happened to attend that, and thank goodness I brought that to staff attention, and they got a chance to get on it because they had some things that would impact us, but originally they had said it wouldn't. But then they kind of flip-flopped and said, no, they're not going to do that. Well, our staff is very sharp, and guess what they did? They said, put it in writing. Let us know what you're going to do. We want to see it, because they were saying one thing at the meeting I attended, and no electeds was there, very few staff, very few people was there, but they had said something different. And they thought the water company was a power plant. So the water people, they know that they're not a power plant, El Toro Water. I attended the housing HCD for Orange County Fire Authority, mental health, League of California City, the conference call for Sacramento with the top legislative person there. And we had 2 more Eagle Scouts on Sunday. The mayor and I was there. And last year, we found out last year they did 40 Eagle Scouts just in that troop alone. 40 Eagle Scouts. So we knew we were doing a lot. Thank you, and everybody be safe going home.
I, too, attended that Eagle Scout Court of Honor in Portola Hills. Edward Niblius and Jacob Fast, Andrew Fast. I'd like to put on, try to get consensus for an RFP. We have a consulting firm out of Sacramento that I brought up the fact that we have a sports park being built. We have a lot of renovations going into our park system and possibly our Village Pond Park. I would like to look at having someone to support staff with grant writing and to be included in that. We got something back from our present lobbyist, and I found out that lobbyist is on a month-to-month as of January or December because the contract had ended. And I just like to think that we could go out and maybe just feel out, maybe because he came back with $1,000 escalated price on top of what we already pay. And so I think that that's worthy of going out to see what's out there in the market. So I'd like to bring that back for a consensus and have that bid go out and have a bid come back to us.
I support that.
I guess I think it may be good to put it on the calendar or agenda at some point so we can find out.
That's what we're doing.
With the idea, well, the way you phrased it, maybe I didn't understand.
Yeah, we're putting.
It sounded like you were saying, go ahead and.
No, we're putting it on the agenda. I'm asking if we put it on the agenda.
Finish is gets staff's input as far as what staff can and can't do, and what you see might be the need as far as the assistance that could be beneficial in grant writing. I mean, it's not necessarily there's anything wrong with the idea, but it's just nice to know exactly how we would package that. So that'd be my suggestion. It might lead to an RFP. I agree.
Let me clarify that. That's for us to put on the agenda to bring back to us for discussion for RFP. Okay.
Yes, there is consensus. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, since we haven't come to a conclusion on if or how we're going to pray, I'd like to close the meeting in a moment of silence for God to bless our city, bless our population here, bless our businesses, and bless this council. So a moment of silence if you'd like to join me, and respect for that, and we'll come back in 2 weeks, and thank you so much, and have a great time.